the development and appraisal stages of validation. So this is proposed by Michael Caine in this chapter, that when validating an assessment, we undergo basically in two stages, the development stage and the appraisal stage. So the first one would be the development stage. According to Caine, in the development stage, the goal here is to develop or adopt and not to alter or modify the assessment, because in order for us to develop an interpretive argument, we need to first develop our assessment. And that represents the proposed interpretation and uses of the scores. Initially, a preliminary interpretive argument is outlined. So the first thing to do here is to outline our interpretive argument in the development stage, and an assessment plan is developed. The interpretive argument makes some assumptions about the assessment and about the resulting scores. So interpretive arguments are about assumptions based on an assessment. So for example, in an essay type assessment, we may assume that this could develop the critical thinking of our student and synthesizing their learning skills in the target language, that they can develop their grammar in English, grammar and content organization. And then also the assessment procedures would be designed in ways that make it likely that the assumptions in the interpretive argument will hold. So the procedures of our assessment would be designed according to our interpretive argument. And that is our way of validating assessment in the development stage. So moving on, if some assumptions are found to be violated during test development, the assessment or the interpretive argument or both can be modified to remove the discrepancies. So to remove the incongruency of the assessment and the argument. Because what it means to violate the test development, because if the interpretive argument doesn't fit with our assessment, it means that they are not meant to be together. So in order for us not to fail in assessing our students, we need to either modify the assessment or the interpretive argument, or it could be both. So this process of development and revision continues until the test developers are satisfied with the fit between test and interpretive argument. The evidence produced during the development stage tends to support the validity of the proposed interpretation and uses, because if any evidence indicates a weakness in the assessment design or in the interpretive argument, the problem is likely to be fixed in some way. So the product or the performance of our students is our evidence, and this evidence supports our assessment, development, and interpretive argument. Without this evidence, we cannot spot the weakness, the weak part of our assessment that needs to be fixed. So these evidence are very vital in developing our assessment and identify and in validity of our assessment. So for example, if the generalizability or reliability of the scores is found to be inadequate, the test might be lengthened, thereby improving the generalizability of the scores. So we all know that in validity, it is interrelated with reliability, because consistency for these both qualities are very important. Consistency is the key. If we find out that the students in this particular assessment has a very low score, consistent low score, then we can identify that this assessment is not valid for our class assessment. So we need to change that and arrange a strategy of assessment that fits to the to our students, that fits to their learning and motivation in the classroom in answering the assessment. So the development stage is expected to deliver a clear statement of what is being claimed in terms of an explicit interpretive argument linking test performances to the proposed interpretation and uses of the scores. So, our interpretive argument should link to our proposed interpretation and uses of the scores in order for the assessment to be valid. So for low stakes applications involving relatively plausible inferences and assumptions. So for example, a teacher made tests used for formative assessment. So I can um, reminding this um, for low stakes application, it reminds me of my experience in my assessment one, wherein we were deployed in a high school department in Loretta National High School, and I gave I gave an examination to my grade 8 students, and finding out that these questionnaires, for example, question number 5, a lot of students has have a major majority of the students got the wrong answer. So it means that the assessment, that the question is not valid. And this evidence, the test results of the students who got the low score or the high score, this evidence for the development phase may be sufficient for validation of interpretation and use. So we don't need more extensive research and critical analysis in the development stage. However, in the appraisal stage, the interpretive argument is subjected to challenge. It says it's like in life, in order for us to earn our success, we need also to face our obstacles, to conquer obstacles and circumstances in life, because pain and challenges is what makes us better and what makes us human. So as in assessment. For high stakes applications, a more extensive and arm's length evaluation of the proposed interpretation and use is called for. So it's not just merely in the test questionnaire, in the test papers, and the results of the students, but it takes a lot of research and evaluation and critical analysis. And examples of high stakes applications are pre-rev. Example in UM-Tagum, the pre-rev, the test developers takes many months and many hours for the test to be implemented, to be taken by the test takers, because it is preparing for the student who will be taking this test is preparing for a bigger step in his life, in his or her life. So high stakes application can be a board examination, an entrance exam for a college or state university, a driver's license, and so on and forth. So this is the appraisal stage. And appraisal stage would begin with a critical review of an interpretive argument with particular attention to identifying any hidden assumptions and alternative plausible interpretations of the scores, and would provide a critical evaluation of the assumptions built into the interpretive argument. So in the development stage, we just need to develop our assessment in order for us to develop also our interpretive argument, because our interpretive argument is our route to make our assessment valid. However, in the appraisal stage, it takes a lot of actions. It takes us to not just to assume narrowly an assessment, but also to brainstorm any hidden assumptions, also the alternative plausible interpretations of the test scores, any other alternative, not just in the main row interpretation of the test scores, and will provide also a critical evaluation of the assumptions. So compared to development stage, that we just need to assume in order for us assume in order for us to create our interpretive argument. In appraisal stage, we also need a critical evaluation of our assumptions built into the interpretive argument for our assessment to be valid. So it takes a lot of effort and takes a lot of time for this assessment in the appraisal stage to be valid. So without the discipline imposed by an explicit statement of the claims being made, it is easy to take much for granted. So the discipline imposed by an explicit statement is our ground in making our assessment valid in the appraisal stage. The appraisal stage would also focus on empirical investigation because it needs a lot of time of research and evaluation. Then it focuses on the empirical investigations, the experiences throughout the years, throughout the days, throughout the decades of the educational assessment. If we relay our these experiences throughout the years in the appraisal stage and the appraisal stage of validation. Now, here in appraisal, the job of validation is not support an interpretation. Therefore, it is not the end game of an assessment, that if the assessment is valid, then it ends there. No, but to find out what might be wrong with it. So it's very innovative. Appraisal stage is very innovative for an assessment because it doesn't just validates an assessment, but also it lingers with what might be the future problem with this assessment. A proposition deserves some degree of trust only when it has survived serious attempts to falsify it. So, it's like life. If you have lived with people who degrades you, who discriminates you, who makes you feel like you're not enough, then you can prove to yourself, if you have survived this, then you can prove to yourself that you are enough and you deserve better. Just like in assessment, if this proposition has survived the attempts of falsifying it, of not withstanding that this is valid, then that is the time that a proposition deserves degree of trust, because this proposition has survived the attempts of falsifying the claims or the proposition. To the extent that interpretive argument survives these challenges, confidence in the claims being made increases. So if this assessment survive the claims or the opposition that it's not good enough, it's not good for the students, if it has surpassed these stages, then we can say that the test developer, it says by Michael Caine, has a confidence in the claims being made increases. So the confidence in the claims are being made increases in order for us to measure if this assessment is valid, if this claims has been through a lot of falsifying and testing. If this analysis reveals serious weakness, however, unfortunately in this part, if this analysis reveals serious weaknesses, either the assessment or the interpretive argument has to be revised or worst abandoned. So, as teacher, we need to do our best for our learners, and that is why no matter how we effort with an assessment, if it's still not good enough and its results are weak, if the results are weak, then we really need to alter things and to create a method that is best fitted with our students' learning. So it is appropriate for test developers to adopt a confirmationist approach during the development stage, where the goal is to develop a plausible interpretive argument based on appropriate assessment. So, during the appraisal stage, it is also appropriate to adopt a more critical stance. So, in this paragraph, it is a conclusion the distinction of the two stages, the development stage, which undergoes more into the development, more into a development of the interpretive argument with the help of an approach, the confirmation approach. But the appraisal stage is more on the instance of critical analysis. Sorry. So the argument-based approach to validation was developed mainly as a way of facilitating the process of validation. So to cut the story short, way before in the 1990s, many researchers or test developers stated that validation is a dauntless and endless process. They don't know how and where to spot that this is enough and this is valid enough. Then there comes the argument-based approach that gives us the direct argument in order for us to fulfill the validation of our test assessment. And here we can find out how to simply use how simple it is to use argument-based approach for us to validate our assessment. First, state the claims that are being made. So we need to state the claims about a certain assessment. For example, in the MCQ, MCQ develops the students' critical thinking, develops their how they deeply or chooses an answer, and also after stating the claims of a certain assessment, explicitly or implicitly, in a proposed interpretation or use, now this is interpretive argument, the claims and proposed interpretation of the claims. So that is our interpretive argument, our interpretation for our claims that we stand to argue for our assessment to be valid. And the second claim, and second, evaluate these claims and the validity. So now in the second one, after interpreting your claims, which turns out to be our interpretive argument, now you need to assess also the assessment by this interpretive argument if these claims are valid, and that is now our validity argument. And that would be all. The next topic would be the developing the interpretive argument and the validity argument. Thank you.